All right, welcome back to another After Dark, everyone. Hope you all are having a good night so far. Hope you guys had a great day. I am overdue for this, and I've been talking about doing something like this for a little while, so the time has come. This video is the most underrated player who helped change the NBA, Mark Price. Mark Price, first of all, coming from channel Legend of Winning, and actually pretty interesting. They got 300,000 subs. So I'll be linking the original video down below in the description, like always. So if you guys like this and you're not subscribed, consider it. I will be doing the same thing. But anyways, Mark Price, dude, he's one of those guys. If he was in a different era and he wasn't in the Jordan era, his career would look so differently and he'd get so much more respect. However, unfortunately, he was stuck in the East, and so was MJ. So we never got to see Mark Price really get the respect that he deserves. However, if you ask any great point guard, like in NBA history, one of the first point guards they always bring up is Mark Price. The guy was ahead of his time, but also fit in with his time perfectly, if that makes sense. And I'm sure this video will cover a lot of that. But anyways, I just felt like it was time to give him some respect. It's not his fault Jordan just completely dominated the Cavs throughout his career. Like, it's not his fault. Anyways, you guys, let's get to this. So yeah, the link is down below for you guys in the description for the original video. Also, you see a list of channel members. Shout out channel members. I hope you guys are having a good night. And everybody, please leave this video a like. It helps out a lot. Let's get to this.
Can I just mention one guy's name who I think is one of the most underrated players of our era, who nobody ever talks about anymore, is Mark Price. He was so good. You remember how
hardest
good?
to check on the pick and roll. He was splitting the pick and roll.
Man.
He created the split.
Yes.
Nobody was
invented the
splitting pick
split.
and rolls.
As a matter of
What's up, YouTube? It's the one and only Legend of Winning,
Mike.
aka Low, and I'm back with another video. Now, for those out there who missed my last video, I highly suggest you go check it out. Pretty controversial. It's me explaining my thoughts on Reggie Miller and why I believe he's overrated. But in that video, I saw a lot of comments in my comment section saying that I should really highlight some of the players during the 90s and some players that were marksmen from behind the three-point line that doesn't receive the right type of recognition for the contributions of where the NBA is at right now. And so here we are, and I humbly oblige to the request that I've constantly seen in my comment section. In today's video, we're going to talk about a player that played during the 90s that was a marksman from behind the three-point line, a savant when it comes to his ability to orchestrate a pick and roll, and a player that many people, you may have heard of his name, but may not thoroughly understand the contributions that he was able to aid in the process in developing the NBA to where it is right now. And that player is Mark Price. But before we dive into who Mark Price is and the relevancy that he has in today's league, let's talk about who Mark Price is as a player when it comes to these facts only.
We talked about the technique, the concentration, the focus. One of the greatest shooters, obviously, in NBA history.
Mark Price is a 6-foot point guard drafted in the 1986 draft class and was actually selected in the second round by the Dallas Mavericks. On draft night, the Dallas Mavericks decided to trade him to the Cleveland Cavaliers for another second round pick.
Whoa.
And there he stayed in Cleveland for 9 consecutive seasons and eventually bounced around the league with 3 other teams. And unfortunately, due to injuries, he inevitably decided to retire in 1998 with the Orlando Magic. Within Mark Price's 12-year career, he was known for his ability to handle the ball, initiate offense through the pick and roll, and by far one of the greatest shooters the NBA has ever seen, especially from behind the arc.
He reminds me of Steve Nash before Steve Nash a little bit, like part of the evolution of the art.
9-year career in Cleveland, he ended it averaging 16 points, 7 assists, 2 to 3 rebounds, a steal, while having really good shooting splits. 47 to 48% from the field, 40 to 41% from behind the arc, and 90% from the free throw line. He would go on to end his career with a very similar stat line as well, and during his prime, he would give you somewhere between 18 and 19 points on a night-to-night basis, 8 to 9 assists, along with a steal and a half as well.
Guy was shooting 41% for the three-point line back then.
While having, again, great shooting splits, roughly around 46.
Mind you, when you guys see the points, this is in the 80s and the 90s. He was a point guard. So point guards weren't supposed to be scoring a lot. That's a shooting guard's job. Now I know it's the line is blurred. Back then it wasn't. Mark Price was a facilitator first, and he'd get a bucket if that was the secondary option.
50% from behind the arc, 40% from the three-point line, and high 80s to 90% from the free throw line. And yes, people, you can probably already tell Mark Price is one of the handful of players in NBA history who is indeed part of the 50-40-90 club.
Yep.
For those out there who don't know what that means, it basically means
I actually didn't know Reggie was part of that, but it makes perfect sense. Everybody else I did. Okay.
A year or possibly two, because Mark Price nearly did it for 2 consecutive seasons, in which he converted 50% of his shots from the field, 40% from behind the arc, and 90% from the free throw
line. If there's anybody I'm surprised who's not on the list, is Ray Allen.
Also, Mark Price would go on to end his career having the highest free throw percentage in league history. Since then, there's only been one player who has surpassed him, and that is Steve Nash.
Okay.
And the only other player that's in the conversation to surpass.
Wow, look how close that is. Look at that. Hey, man, Steph, shout out. Rick Barry, Peja.
Mark Price is Steph Curry. So I'm pretty sure we all understand that Mark Price indeed is a great shooter. Mark Price will go on to end his career as a 4-time All-Star, a 4-time All-NBA player. In 1993, he actually made the first team All-NBA selection. Now, what is the negative part of Mark Price in his game? Really wasn't the greatest defender. I would even go as far as saying in some years of his career, especially due to his injuries, he was a liability on the defensive side. Also, yes, he was very quick and fast. However, he was not a leaper, nor was he strong. So on the athleticism side, really doesn't favor him that much as well. And also, when it comes to his playoff success, a lot of times he got knocked out in the first round. I personally believe that has a lot to do with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls.
It does.
But didn't really see that much playoff success whatsoever throughout his career.
Now, we lived it. I mean, I lived through this. Yeah, it's MJ.
And also, like I have alluded to earlier in this video, injuries really and truly kept Mark Price back to the success that he was supposed to see throughout his career. And even though, yes, he played in the NBA for 13 seasons, he played fewer than 800 games throughout his entire career.
Oh, wow.
Well, he was a little bit like Steve Nash in that he was the best shooting point guard of his day. Could shoot any shot.
Now, when it comes to being a shooter, Mark Price is definitely one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, but unfortunately, not too many people even talk about it. Now,
I mean, that's because he's a point guard. Guys like him and Nash, I think, would have more success in today's era, big time, because today's era is built for a point guard who's your primary scorer. And these guys were the best shooters on their teams and arguably in the league during their runs. I'm talking about Steve Nash and Mark Price. So if they played today, they had the green light to shoot whenever they wanted. That'd be freaking awesome.
Personally, I would make an argument that Mark Price is at least in the conversation to be a top 10 shooter of all time. But if you were to go out and take the time out to look at any YouTube video, any blog post, any person who would make a top 10 shooters list of all time, Mark Price might not even be in the conversation. Matter of fact, I've gone and done some research myself, and certain sites such as Complex doesn't even have him in the top 15. So here's the reason why he should at least be in the conversation to be top 10. Like I stated earlier, Mark Price is one of the handful of players in NBA history to record a 50-40-90 season. Also, when it comes to the three-point shot, Mark Price is one of the handful of players who end his career shooting 40% from behind the arc. Like I also alluded to earlier in the video, Mark Price ended his career and still to this day is only second when it comes to career free throw percentage. And for those out there who still are not believers, Mark Price is actually the first player in NBA history to be a volume three-point shooter while still converting 40% from behind the arc.
Yep, saw that
earlier. In the 1990 season, Mark Price attempted 5 three-pointers a game while still shooting 40% from behind the arc, which made him the first player in NBA history to accomplish such a feat.
Nick Anderson, wow. And Dennis Scott. So Orlando had 2 of the best three-point shooters combined with Penny Hardaway and Shaq down low. Jeez.
But what makes things even more impressive is how long it took for someone else to duplicate this effort. Up until the 1994-1995 season, there still had not been a single player who was able to accomplish what Mark Price had accomplished. And even when we look at the 1994-1995 season,
I expected to see Dennis, sorry, I'm still fixated on this. I expected to see Dennis Scott somewhere in here. Nick Anderson, I'm surprised. And both of them were starters
Sure, you have 5
What a
other
team.
players such as Reggie Miller, Glenn Rice, Nick Anderson. They were able to do this. However, for those out there who are unaware, this is the same season, is actually the first season in which the NBA moved the three-point line closer to the basket. And so for the next 2 to 3 years, yes, there were a handful of players in the 90s who were able to, again, attempt 5 three-pointers on a night-to-night basis while shooting 40% from behind the arc. However, technically speaking, they weren't shooting the same range that Mark Price was attempting.
Don't you guys find it ironic that every time Jordan leaves the game, the NBA panics and starts shifting stuff up? So the first time he left, 1 year later, they're like, all right, we need to change the three-point line. We need to beef up scoring. We need to make this more exciting. And then Jordan comes back and they go back to normal. And then Jordan retires for the final time in 2003. And they're like, okay, we need to beef up scoring. We got to get rid of hand checking. It's just wild, dude.
His shots from. And so it took all the way into the 1997-1998 season in which they moved the three-point line back to its original position, and a player by the name of Wesley Person, another great three-point shooter that many people overlooked during the 90s, he was able to accomplish this feat. And then we have to wait all the way into the 2000-2001 season in which Vince Carter and Ray Allen was able to accomplish the exact same thing. So basically we're referring to a 5-year gap until someone else is able to duplicate that type of productivity.
Yeah.
And even then, that was,
like I said, way ahead of his time.
When they moved the three-point line closer to the basket. And then after that, we have to wait another 8 years until someone was able to accomplish the same thing that Mark Price was able to accomplish while shooting the traditional three. So again, I just don't understand why so many people overlook Mark Price when it comes to great shooters.
It's because he never made an NBA Finals. Once again, it's because of Jordan. It's not his fault. He was out there busting ass, doing his thing every year. But yeah, if you don't make the finals, you get forgotten. Look at T-Mac. You know, look at Melo. Like these players are becoming forgotten. Look at Steve Nash. You know, a perfect example. Steve Nash. They're all being forgotten because they never made it to the big stage.
He was prolific when it comes to shooting on every aspect of the floor. The second player in NBA history behind Larry Bird to be a 50-40-90 player, and one of 7 to be a 50-40-90 player on at least 200 three-pointers attempts throughout their year. And Mark Price ended his career with the highest free throw percentage, and as of right now is only second behind Steve Nash throughout NBA history. Every statistical evidence points out that Mark Price was indeed one of the greatest shooters the league has ever seen.
100%.
And yet I don't hear enough people rooting for Mark Price when it comes to those type of arguments.
I know, that's why I try to bring him up as much as possible. And whenever I do, it seems like it switches on a light for a lot of you. Because I see you in the comments. You're like, yeah, good shout out to Mark Price. But yet, he's rarely talked about. He's rarely talked about. Only sometimes we hear the greats talk about him, but no one else is ever talking about Mark Price. But then again, I mean, this is like an experiment in a way. Most people don't even know who Mark Price is. This video probably going to get like 300 views. I'm not even I mean, I think so, at least. I think it's going to get something like that because only you have to not only be like a super real hooper, but you also had to be alive during this time. If not, you have no idea who Mark Price is. So it'll be a fun experiment to see how many views this video gets. But that's just how it goes. It's unfortunate. And that's why it's kind of sad seeing like so many, because back then I didn't understand this when I was younger. But now that I'm older, and then I see someone like a T-Mac or a Carmelo or a Steve Nash, and I'm aware, I'm like, they didn't win a championship. Time is going to forget them in like 5 or 6 years, you know, and then like they're going to be just in the back burner, and they'll get brought up once in a blue moon, like a what's a good example? Like an Orlando Woolrich or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. But yeah, anyways, rant over.
Wanted to check on the pick and roll. He was splitting the pick and roll.
Man.
He created the split.
Yes.
Nobody was
invented the
splitting pick
split.
and rolls.
Now, the second thing I want to talk about when it comes to Mark Price is his ability to initiate offense through the pick and roll. Yes, I understand that you had John Stockton.
Speaking of two people who are forgotten, look at this. You don't get much greater than this. But who's really talking about Malone or Stockton these days? And why? Michael freaking Jordan.
Karl Malone. And yes, I understand they had a very historic career initiating the offense out of the pick and roll.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to John Stockton and Karl Malone, both of those players are a little bit different from where we are in today's NBA. When it came to John Stockton, he really wasn't the initiator or wasn't that aggressive when it comes to scoring off the pick and roll. Sure, every now and then he would knock down a shot here and there, but obviously, as we all know, Karl Malone was a focal point offensively and when it comes to scoring out of that pick and roll. And the second thing is where they set the pick and roll. For those out there who don't know, John Stockton and Karl Malone used to initiate the pick and roll below the three-point line around the elbow jumper.
Start off here is unlike today's what they out of the three-point line. That's not a pick and roll. I don't know what that is.
Yep.
But we start right here at the free throw line.
So unfortunately, even though yes,
it's all high pick and rolls now. Yeah.
It was very efficient. It was very effective. In today's NBA, we understand that setting the pick and roll behind the three-point line allows for better spacing, and it also allows for better action from both players who are setting the pick and coming off of the pick as well. Now, when it comes to Mark Price, for those out there who are unaware, he was actually one of the very few players, if not the first player in NBA history, to make a career off of that type of action. If you watch him play and if you watch the action between him and Brad Daugherty, the big man that used to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's very similar to how many players initiate the pick and roll in today's NBA. Not only that, there's multiple players, including
these guys were right. Look at them split these.
Teammate Steve Kerr, who's also compared him to Steve Nash on multiple occasions. And also for those out there who don't know,
by the way, you got to subscribe. Good stuff.
Steve Kerr, while he's been coaching Steph Curry on numerous occasions, has claimed that Mark Price is probably the closest comparison to Steph Curry in NBA history. So coming off of the pick and roll, since Mark Price was such a prolific shooter, the defenses, they had basically had to double and blitz him. Very similar to how many teams, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, have defended the pick and roll when it comes to the Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry. And because of this, and because of their ability to push him up the three-point line, he immediately A, passes the ball to Brad Daugherty, very similar to Steph Curry, or B, he used to split the defense, which is something that many people claim that Mark Price was the originator of. If Mark Price was indeed that creative, I definitely believe more people should give him all the praise in the world when it comes to his ability to adapt to the world that he played in, because let's just be honest, it was very hard and the rules were not in favor for guards to be that aggressive coming off pick and rolls or even just being on the perimeter.
No, they weren't. And him splitting the defense like that off of the pick and rolls, that's a lot of contact he's got to deal with over and over and over again. Like I said, he'd have a field day in today's game. He's built for it.
So
he'd be like a Brunson nowadays, you know, like tougher than everyone, but still just as fast as everyone. He's got the deep ball. He can split the defense anytime. Foul him, put him on the line. That's the worst thing you could possibly do because he's 90%.
Price initiated offense at the top of the three-point line, which is very rare during the 90s. He was a ball handler. During his prime, gave you somewhere between 8 to 10 assists on a night-to-night basis, and he also was a prolific three-point shooter. And even though, yes, so was Ray Allen and Reggie Miller, Glenn Rice, Mitch Richmond, however, none of them were really that great of ball handlers, and even if they were, they really didn't initiate offense for others the way that Mark Price did.
Yeah, they weren't point
guards. And the reason why that's so important in today's NBA is because that's the way that many guards play in today's game. Yes, you have three-point shooting, and yes, you have efficient scoring from multiple guards, but the whole purpose and the way that they initiate offense is not only to be prolific for themselves, but also to be prolific and efficient for everyone else on their team, so they too are initiating offense. And again, I understand there's definitely multiple players throughout NBA history who have played very similar games, but when it comes to Mark Price, his contributions should definitely be talked about much more, especially when it comes to his ability to initiate offense from the pick and roll at the top of the key, which was very, very rare during the late 80s to 90s. So all of this leads us to why is it that no one talks about Mark Price? For one, I'm gonna be honest, he's white. I'm gonna just be completely honest, you know, a white player doesn't really get that much respect in the NBA. Two, He definitely didn't receive the type of success, especially during the postseason, that a lot of people were expecting. I personally believe a lot of it has to do with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, because out of the 7 appearances that Mark Price had in the postseason during his career, 5 of which were concluded because they matched up with the Chicago Bulls, which was led by Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Phil Jackson, and they just didn't match up that well whatsoever. But also, I definitely believe that the injuries kept him out of the conversation of being one of the best point guards, even during the 90s. And I think a lot of people overlook his contributions because of those variables. However, if you watch him play, any unbiased person or anyone who is fluent in basketball would tell you what type of player Mark Price was and how vastly ahead of his time he was, especially during the 90s when rules were just not in place for a player of his stature to dominate the way that many players dominate in today's league. And even though, yes, I understand people want to point out players such as Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Mitch Richmond, and the slew of other shooters during the 90s and early 2000s, however, in today's league, it's more than just shooting. You have guards who are not only trying
once again, the difference in a comparison there is completely different positions. This was before the positionless basketball time, and Mark Price was a point guard. He was not a shooting guard.
Be efficient and prolific from every aspect of the floor when it comes to scoring, but also their ability to handle the ball, initiate offense is very important, especially coming off of pick and rolls. And as great as a shooter,
I mean, think about like what a different time we're at now. He's a point guard, right? He plays off the ball just like a shooting guard. He plays just like Reggie Miller did. So point guard no longer means facilitator. I think point guard nowadays just means you're the smallest guy in the court. But as far as like who does what role, you know, we could have a center bring the ball up now.
Scores those other players were, none of them were really ball handlers and initiated offense the way that Mark Price has done throughout his career, which easily translates to where we are right now in NBA history. So with all that being said, people, please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. Let me know what you learned out of this video if you never even heard of Mark Price, and if you have heard of Mark Price, if there was some new information that you figured out about him in the comment section below as well. And I'll see you all next video. Peace.
I think this was a good breakdown, especially for someone who didn't like grow up watching Mark Price. I think he did a very good job. I went ahead and subscribed to the channel. It's pretty cool. Never heard of this channel before. In fact, I already forgot the name of it. Legend of Winning. Anyways, guys, the link will be down below if you guys are interested in checking the channel out as well. I do enjoy channels that cover less talked about players, you know. And this was 7 years ago. Okay, wow, I didn't pay attention to that part. Anyways, you guys, what'd you think? What do you think about Mark Price? To me, it was like there's a stepping stone to get to where we are, and Mark Price was one of them, and Steve Nash was another one of them in 05, you know, starting in 05, and then it became its full thing. You know, but other players contributed too, like Allen Iverson being a score first point guard. Like all these little things from all these players changing the game a little bit at a time led to what we saw with a Steph Curry, and you know, now basically most teams their point guard is their, I mean, not most teams, but a lot of teams now their point guard is their lead scorer, and that was like, we never saw that crap back in the day, so it's a different time. Anyways, you guys, put your comments down below. We'll have a conversation as always. And guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, okay? I'm going to head out and go edit and do all that stuff and then chill for the rest of the night. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. And most importantly, is to be water, my friends.